Alright, and welcome to this PhoneGap lesson. Now, many developers may be asking, well, what is PhoneGap? Well, PhoneGap is a free and open source framework that allows us to build native installable applications across a range of different devices and platforms. It also allows us to build those applications using our existing knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Also, through JavaScript, we can access the PhoneGap API to leverage access to the device's features and peripherals. For example, the accelerometer, camera, microphone, file system, and more. Now, some developers may be asking, well, what are the disadvantages to PhoneGap? Well, number one, you can't use PHP, so you can't directly connect to a MySQL database. Also, the API support slightly varies from platform to platform. Also, some platforms don't support some specific APIs of PhoneGap at all. However, that said, PhoneGap will save you a ton of time in development of mobile applications, as it will allow you to distribute across multiple platforms with a single build. However, you might have to slightly change the way your mobile application works on different platforms. However, PhoneGap is a wonderful framework. Now, first of all, I'm going to be showing you how to set up and use PhoneGap in Dreamweaver CS 5.5. However, we will not be compiling our applications throughout this course in Dreamweaver CS 5.5 because at this present time, Dreamweaver supports PhoneGap 0.9.3, but this is not the latest version of PhoneGap. So, we will be using Dreamweaver throughout the course, but only to edit the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. But I will be showing you how to compile the application in an IDE called Eclipse. This will allow me to compile the application with the latest version of PhoneGap. So we get the best of both worlds. Okay, so let's open up Dreamweaver CS 5.5 and take a look at the project that I've got set up right now. So I have an index.html file. This file is very basic, as you can see. It's just got a title of My Cartoon Smart and a paragraph of Hello World. Now, this file is absolutely crucial because it is the first file that is displayed to the user once the native side of the application is finished loading. So you must make sure that you include this file in your project. Then you can see that we have these two images. Now, this is the logo image or the icon image that will be displayed on the user's home screen, menu, or wherever they've placed the shortcut to your application. Then we have the splash screen, or what's more formally known as the startup screen. Now, that is being displayed whilst the native side of the application is loading. Now, I'm going to discuss more in depth about native and non-native as we get to coding with JavaScript and so forth. However, these two images I recommend that you include, but they are not required, so you don't have to include them. However, the logo helps identify your application against all the other applications, and the startup screen, or the splash screen as I like to call it, is displayed whilst the native side of the application is loading. So let's say it took 5 to 10 seconds for the native side of the application to get going. Well, the issue is if you don't include that image, it will show a blank screen, and the users may believe that your application is not responding or doesn't work at all, and so then they'll exit out of the application and then they will uninstall it, so it'll be pointless. So obviously I recommend that you include both of these images, as most applications do. So now that we've taken a look at the project, the next thing to do is configure the application framework. So what we need to do is go up to Site and then go down to Mobile Applications. Now you'll be using that menu a lot whilst building your mobile applications. So please do remember it. So go to Site, Mobile Applications, and the first menu item is Configure Application Framework, because it's the first thing that you must do. Now for Mac OS X users, this dialog box will be a lot more extensive, and the reason being is because Mac OS X users, and only Mac OS X users, can develop for the iOS. So unfortunately, as I'm on Windows, I can only show you how to build and set up an Android mobile application. So right now it wants to know about the Android SDK. Well, I've already installed the Android SDK. If you haven't got Android SDK installed, then just click on Easy Install and it will take care of everything for you. Now if you have trouble with the easy installation feature of Dreamweaver CS 5.5, then you need to manually install it. So what we need to do is download, first of all, JDK. That's the very first thing we need to do. So type in Google JDK and you should be able to click on this website, Java SE Downloads. And essentially it'll take you to this page right here, and we can download the JDK. So click the download button right underneath JDK, and you want to download the 32-bit version of JDK for your operating system. So I'm running Windows, so obviously I want to download the Windows version of JDK, and I'm going to click on this x86, okay, which is 32-bit, alright, and I want to download that. And even if you're on a 64-bit version of Windows, you still want to download the 32-bit version of JDK. It's very, very important. So download the 32-bit version of JDK. And then we can go over to the developer site for Android by going to developer.android.com. It'll take you to this web page right here, and we need to click on SDK. Now for Windows we have two choices. We have the .zip or the .exe. Now the .zip is basically containing all those little files that make up the Android SDK, and the same for Mac OS X, and actually the same for Linux. However, this zip basically allows us to extract to a file location. So I have this already downloaded. So if I go to downloads, you'll be able to see this is the zip file that I've downloaded, and I've extracted it to the downloads directory. And essentially it's a standalone installation, which means I could double click on this right now and it would launch. Okay, so it doesn't exactly matter where you extract it to, but I would say extract it to a location where you are not likely to delete it, because if you delete this folder right here and Dreamweaver is pointing to it, it's going to go, well, where's the SDK? So you need to make sure that you put it in a safe location where you're not going to delete it. I recommend program files inside of C drive. So let's say that I've extracted that file now, so I want to click on the browse for file, and I need to browse to the download directory. So I can click on, go to downloads, and then Android SDK, and so forth, and click there on the Android SDK Windows, okay? Don't go any further down. And there you go, okay? So that's fine. However, if I was to delete that file, then it will be a major issue. So obviously I recommend you put it in C program files, which is funny enough where the .exe extracts it to. So essentially the exe installer will number one check if JDK is installed. So if you're unsure if you have JDK or not, then go to the developer Android site like so, and essentially download the exe, and it will tell you whether you have JDK or not. It will say JDK found. If it isn't found, then it will come up with a big, image saying you need to download it. You click on the image and it will take you over to the downloads, okay, right there. And also it will extract those files to C program files automatically for you, so it's keeping it in a safe location. So once you've actually installed it, then you need to go to Dreamweaver, click on that browse for file icon, go to my computer, C drive, and I'm on a 64-bit version of Windows. Okay, so I go into program files x86. Alright, now if you're on a 32-bit, don't worry about it, just go into program files. If you've only got one option, then it'll be program files. If you've got two options like this, it means you're on 64-bit and you want to go to program files x86, then to Android, then to Android SDK, and then click OK, and then save. That's very important that you do that. Save it, and there you go. You're all set up and ready to rock and roll. So that's how easy it is to actually manually set up Android SDK and configure the application framework inside of Dreamweaver CS 5.5. So now that we've configured the application framework, the next thing we need to do is configure the application settings. So we need to go to Site, then Mobile Applications, and the second thing we need to do is do the application setting, which is the second menu item. And what you'll normally get up here in the bundle ID is something like this. Okay, and essentially what we want to do is change the company name, and being very careful not to put in any spaces right here or any other special characters that are not these. Okay, so I'm just going to change that to the company in question, which is cartoonsmart, and the app name my cartoonsmart. Being very careful not to delete those little periods. Okay, now don't worry about the string of text because it won't be displayed to the user anyway, so you don't need to make it look nice and so forth. So the only special characters you can use are those right there, and essentially all you've got to do is make sure that you don't use any spaces. Then we can put in the application name that will appear just below your application's icon on the user's home screen or menu. So I can say my cartoonsmart. Then I can put an author name in. Pretty sure I don't need to explain that one to you. Then I can put a version number in for this application. That helps the users of your application determine whether the application is current or not that they have installed on their device. Then I can add in an icon. As I said, it is optional, but if you do want to add in an icon, which I imagine you would, then it needs to be in the PNG file format. And as you can see, I can select the logo for that, and I can select the startup screen image. And the target path is essentially going to be where it's going to place a folder inside of the target path with all the different files that make up the application, and the application is compiled and built inside of the target path. So that's very, very important. Then we have to select our OS version. Now by default, Dreamweaver creates an Android virtual device for us. Hence DW_AVD, Dreamweaver Android Virtual Device. Now this is for the emulator. Now as you all know, Android is a very popular platform for mobile devices, but you can have all different types of mobile devices running Android. For example, I could have a tablet that runs Android, and I have different smartphones that run Android. But the thing is, you have all different types of hardware configurations, different screen resolutions, and so forth. So this can make it very tricky. So what we can do is we can set up multiple Android virtual devices to suit our needs, because obviously you're not going to go out to the shops and buy as many Android devices as possible, because to be honest with you, it would be a big waste of money. So we can obviously emulate or imitate how our applications will function on those devices. And we can set up our own Android virtual devices to control the environment in which our application is emulated. So I can click on Manage AVDs, and that will open up a little dialog box for us, like so. And just as a quick side note, if you've manually downloaded the Android SDK and you haven't used the Dreamweaver CS 5.5 easy installation, then you can download all these different Android operating systems and use them in the emulator. But the default one is Android 2.2 API level 8. Okay, so make sure that you have that at least installed for the Dreamweaver Android virtual device. But let's say that I want to add a new Android virtual device. Well, then we go to Tools and then Manage AVDs. And it opens up this dialog box. Now, as you can see, we have the Dreamweaver Android virtual device inside of here. We can get some details on it. We can even start it up so we can see how it will look. But we can also edit it, delete it, and we can also create new Android virtual devices. So we can say new. And then I can give this Android virtual device a name. So I could say Tablet AVD, standing for Tablet Android Virtual Device. It's also very important with the names of your Android virtual devices that you do not put spaces in. As you can see, it's come up saying it won't accept it, okay, because you put a space in. So make sure that you don't do that. Okay, so we must now select a target. What operating system is installed on it? Well, the Dreamweaver AVD had the Android 2.2 API level 8, but you can choose any other target OS that you would like, but don't forget to install it first. So for example, if I wanted to have the Android 3.0 operating system on there, I would tick that little box. It will download all of that, and you just click on install packages and it will do it for you. I can set the SD or the storage size of the device, so I can set that to be kilobytes, megabytes or gigabytes. I can set that to be 8 gigabytes of storage. I can enable snapshotting. I can change the skin, which is to do with the display itself. Okay, it can have multiple displays, and as you can see, when I change the skin right here, it changes the abstracted LCD density. Now I can also choose a custom resolution that I can have, so I could say 800 by 900 for my tablet. I can also change the hardware itself, add new hardware, delete hardware, and so forth. So for example, let's say that I wanted to emulate the accelerometer, I could do that. And there's tons and tons of options in here that you can select from. Okay, and then you can simply click on Create AVD, and it will actually create that Android virtual device for you. Now, it'll probably take a very long time to actually do it. That's why I had to pause there for just a second. But essentially, eventually, you will get a dialog box like this, Android Virtual Devices Manager, and it will basically tell you all the configurations, and then it will show up in this list right here. And again, I can get details, and I can even start up the emulator. Okay? So essentially now, if I was to close this, I could now select from my target OS version. You might have to give it a bit of time to reload, but essentially it will come up with the Tablet AVD Android virtual device. So as soon as I say build and emulate, it will actually emulate it in the environment that I've set up right there. So it will emulate in the Tablet Android virtual device. So I'm just going to leave it with the default, and then we can click on Save. So that's essentially how you configure the application settings. Okay, so now that we have set up all of our settings, we now need to build our application and install it on an Android device. Now, I'm not going to be using an emulator through this course because the emulator is incredibly slow. So if you're worried about the speed of your applications on the emulator, don't worry. The emulator is very, very slow. However, when you actually install the application on an Android device, you will get the true speed. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you. So what I'm going to do is go down to Site, then go to Mobile Applications, and then we can go to Build. Now I know that this is being cut off here, but it's giving me the option to build for Android. Now for Mac OS X users, you'll have more than one option here. You'll have a second option for iOS. So I can say build, this will just build it all for me and do everything. Build and emulate means it will build it and then it will emulate it on the emulator that we have set up in the application settings. So I'm just going to say build and then Android, and that will create a folder in the selected target path, which is my desktop. So I'm just going to leave it to go right now. And then we should get a little dialog box in a couple of seconds that will say it has successfully completed. And then I can go to the desktop, and here is the folder it's just created, and it has all the little files necessary to create the Android application. However, I'm not interested in any of these. Okay, I'm interested in one file. It's inside of the bin file, and it's this .apk file. That is the installer for the Android device. So that file right there is what I want to install onto my device. So I'm going to open up my HTC software and click on Application Installer. And as you can see, I've already got it in the location, but just to show you, go to the selected target path, which in my case is the desktop. Then I'm going to go into the folder, go to bin, and then click on the .apk. Okay, you can click on either one, but I'm just going to go with this default one. Click on Open. It'll ask me, do you want to install it? I'll say yes, install. And what I have open is a screen capture that comes with the Android SDK, and also I have my webcam pointing to the Android device. And the reason why I've done that is because on this right here you can get the true speed of the application, and this is just for clarity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to nip this off a quick second. Put this on the home screen, put it back. There we go. Okay, so now you can see that I have my application icon and the little label underneath it, the application name. So once I click on that, you'll be able to see the real-time speed of the application. There's the startup screen while the native side is still loading, and there is the index.html file being displayed once the native side has finished loading. But again, I'll talk more on that in the next tutorial. So as you can see, very easy, and that is our very first application that's built with PhoneGap. Now the emulator is just as easy. Okay, what it will do is it will build it, it'll go through that little dialog box, but then it will open up a window like this. It might take a couple of seconds and so forth. However, you'll get something that looks roughly like this, and you can click on applications and so forth, and you can navigate through, and you have to remember your cursor is now a virtual finger essentially. And on the right hand side we have all the settings and controls for the phone. So I have all the different buttons, navigation buttons, ring, put the phone down, and the keypad. Okay, and so there are a lot of stuff that we can do with this, but again, it is very, very slow. So try not to worry about the speed of your applications on the Android emulator, because it will be very, very slow. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize that. And so now what we want to take a look at is how to build our applications using Eclipse so we get the latest version of PhoneGap. Because if you remember me telling you right at the beginning of this tutorial, Dreamweaver is actually using PhoneGap 0.9.3. Well, since then there's been plenty of releases of PhoneGap, and of course I can't show you all the new APIs that have come out because we're not on the latest version of PhoneGap. So at the moment we have PhoneGap 1.3, and I want to develop with the latest version of PhoneGap, of course, because it gets rid of lots of bugs and errors and so forth. So we need to use a different IDE instead of Dreamweaver. However, we will be using Dreamweaver throughout the course to edit the HTML, CSS and JavaScript files. But we will be compiling, building our application using the Eclipse IDE. However, you can edit HTML, CSS and JavaScript files in Eclipse just fine. I'd just rather use Dreamweaver because we are more familiar with that IDE. So now what we're going to do is go to the Eclipse website. So go to eclipse.org and then we want to click on Download Eclipse. Now we do want Eclipse Classic, however we don't want version 3.7.1 because there are a lot of issues with it. So what we want to do is click on that heading and we want to go for the Helios package, which is slightly older. Okay, Indigo is the very latest, which we don't want. And it brings us up with Eclipse Classic 3.6.2 and we want to download that version. And I've downloaded the Windows 32-bit version. Obviously you need to download the correct one for your operating system. Then once you have downloaded Eclipse, which I already have done, like so, okay, and as you can see I have extracted it, so it comes as a zip file and pretty much it's a standalone installation, so there's no exe installer or so forth, so you just extract it, you can open it up and you can double click on this Eclipse shortcut, and essentially what that's going to do is it's going to fire up Eclipse and it's going to ask us where's the default place where we want to save all of our projects. I've just left it to the default location. And there you go, there's Eclipse. So there's no exe installation, it's all standalone. Now obviously I'm not going to keep the Eclipse program in that directory. It's not a very good place to keep it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the Eclipse folder with all the Eclipse files in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Program Files, x86 and C drive and paste it in there. Then it keeps it in a more secure location where I'm not likely to delete it. Then I can go inside of there and I can create a quick shortcut to the desktop. And what I can do now is close that down, like so. Okay, so now I have a shortcut on my desktop that's pointing to Eclipse. So I can open that up. Now with this, do you want to save it in all your projects in a certain location? I'm just going to say use this as the default and don't ask me again. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this a little bit so it's fitting all the corners of the recording, like so. And then I'm going to go to the developer.android website and I'm going to click on SDK, and what we want is the Adt plugin. This is the first thing we have to do to get up and running, so we need to click on that and it will give us some information on how to install it. Okay, so essentially we want to look at this, downloading the Adt plugin. And so essentially what we've got to do is we've got to click on Help, Install New Software. Then we're going to click on Add. And then we're going to type in as the name Adt Plugin. And then we're going to go back to the website and we are just going to copy this URL. And if you have trouble with the HTTPS, which is a secure socket, then you can just try HTTP. But obviously HTTPS is preferred because it is more secure. Click OK, you'll see it says pending, and then eventually it will show developer tools right here. So I want to click on that and then click next, and then you'll be able to see that it's given us all that option. It says yep, no problem. Click next, click yes, I accept the terms and conditions, even though I can't even see them, but it doesn't matter anyway. I'm just going to say accept. Then it's going to show me this installing software dialog box, and we're just going to leave it to get on with the installation of the Adt plugin. So really, that's how easy it is. It's very, very simple to install a plugin inside of Eclipse. Now if we wait a little bit, there might be a little error message that comes up. It's not necessarily an error message, it's a warning message that's saying, you know, the software you're trying to install contains unsigned content. Just click OK to that. It's absolutely fine. It's a safe source that we're getting it from. And once it's installed, it's going to ask you to restart it. So hit on restart now. It's going to fire up. And as soon as it fires up, as you can see, it's already linked in and ready to rock. So we can open the Android SDK manager, as you can see. So it's already linked up. Now you might have a slightly different option. It may come up with a dialog box saying, you know, installing new SDK. You can do that if you haven't already, or you could point it to your existing SDK, like we did with Dreamweaver, where you go and see program files and then point to the Android SDK. That's very, very easy to do. So if you've already got an existing one, just choose the existing option, point to the Android SDK. If not, then choose the easy install, essentially, that's built in with the Adt plugin. So that's really great. But as you can see, it's all linked up right now. We have those two little icons, one for the Android SDK manager and the other one for the virtual device manager. Okay, and that will open up like so. Very, very easy and very, very simple. So now there's one more plugin that we have to install to make our lives a lot easier. Literally, we'll just have to click a button and it will take care of most of the stuff for us, for actually building and configuring a PhoneGap application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this website right here, PhoneGap Eclipse plugin for Android. So all you've got to do is tap in Google PhoneGap Eclipse plugin, and it should be this first link. And essentially what it's going to say is, first of all, you need to either have Eclipse Indigo or Helios, which we've already got Helios, so that's fine. And we have installed the Adt plugin already, so obviously that's required for this plugin to work. And then what we're going to do is we are going to again enter a new repository site so that it can download the MDS PhoneGap for Android plugin 1.2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly copy that name and put that in as the name. It is optional if you want. And I'm going to go to help, and what we're going to do is we're going to say install new software, click on add, and then I can paste that in. And as we are on PhoneGap 1.3 at this present time, I'm going to change that from 1.2 to 1.3. But again, don't worry about it. You don't have to have that name in there. You could just leave it blank if you really wanted to. Then we go back to the website. And this is the repository site. And then all you got to do is click OK. And it's pretty much next, I accept, and you're pretty much finished. So I'm going to paste that in the location. Click OK. It says pending. And we want to just tick on that. And then click next, and then we'll click next, I accept, finish. And then again it's going to be downloading the PhoneGap plugin for Eclipse. And as I said, I've had major problems with 3.7.1 getting the Adt plugin to work and everything else, so I just recommend 3.6.2 because everything works with it and it works very quick and it's great. So what we're going to do now is let this finish. It may come up with again another one of those warnings saying, you know, yeah, the contents of the plugin has some unsigned content. However, I'm just going to say OK because I know it's safe. And again, I'm going to say restart now. So again, Eclipse is firing up. So now, as you can see, we have this PhoneGap icon that's been added to our menu bar. When we click on that, we open up a dialog box right here. What I need to do is shrink this down a little bit so you can see it. So what I can do is I can use the built-in PhoneGap version of the plugin, which is 1.3.0. Now, at the present time, that is the latest version of PhoneGap. Now, let's say for argument's sake that that isn't the latest version of PhoneGap. What do we do next? Well, it's very easy. All we have to do is go to phonegap.com and download PhoneGap. Then you go to the location in which you've downloaded PhoneGap and extract the zip. And then what we need to do is point to that folder right there that contains all those subfolders. So I click on enter a path to the installed PhoneGap, click on browse, and I want to go into my downloads folder, downloads. Go into that folder right there, okay, and I want to click on that folder that contains all those subfolders. Now, note that I'm not clicking on the subfolders, I'm clicking on the folder that contains all those folders. So I'm going to click on that and click OK. I can also include Jquery mobile libraries if I wish. Jquery mobile is great for UI design in your application. We can also include the Censure Touch libraries as well. And the project contents allows us to use the PhoneGap example source as a template for the project. Now, this is a great boilerplate for you to start off with. However, I'm just going to create a minimal PhoneGap project. Now what we need to do is fill in a project name. I will call this my cartoons. And I'm going to create a new project in the workspace. I can also create a project from an existing source, and I can also create a project from an existing sample. I can also choose where to save my project. So at the moment I'm using the default location, which is when Eclipse opens up, it asks you for the default location where all your projects will be stored. I'm just going to stick with the default location, but you can untick that box and save your project somewhere else if you wish. Then we have to choose a build target. So just take a quick note that Android 4.0 is automatically ticked. However, my device runs on Android 2.3.3. So I'm going to untick that, and I'm actually going to choose Android 2.2 API level 8 for compatibility. Then I'm going to click next. So now what we need to do is fill in our application name. That's going to appear on the user's home screen or wherever they've placed a shortcut to your application. Then we need to fill in the package name field. Now think of this as the bundle ID field of Dreamweaver. And essentially what you want to do is you want to do a reverse of your domain. So for example, we have cartoonsmart.com. So what I'm going to do is say com.cartoonsmart, and then I'm going to say dot, and then obviously I'm going to put in the application name, which is my cartoons, like so. You do want to create an activity file, so leave that ticked, very, very important. the minimum SDK level must match the build target that you've chosen. So I've chosen Android 2.2 API level 8. So my minimum SDK level is API level 8 Android 2.2. It selected it for me automatically. I can also create a test project if I wish, but I'm not going to do that. And then I'm just going to click on finish, and it's going to build the PhoneGap project and configure it all up for us. Okay, so here we are in our PhoneGap project. So you may have a little bit of an issue. As you can see, a little red X has appeared on this Android manifest.xml file, and also that means that our project isn't going to export to an Android application. You cannot have any errors. So what's the issue with this file? Well, if we actually go back to the wiki page that contains the information on the PhoneGap Eclipse plugin, you'll be able to see that it says choosing a target name less than 2.3 will require you to actually edit the Android manifest.xml file, which is the file that's erroring in our project right now, and we need to take out this bit of information in the XML file. So obviously we chose Android 2.2 as our build target, and essentially because that's less than 2.3 we have to edit this Android manifest.xml file. So all you have to do is right click on the file, say open with, and then we want to say open with a text editor. It'll open up in that window very quickly. And we need to take out this Android, X large screens equals true. Now do not get that mixed up with large screens. It's X large screens. So take out that line, and we can save that now. As you can see, all the crosses have gone, and we are up and running. So let's close that. So now what we need to do is export this application. So click on the project folder and then right click on it, then click on export, and then what we need to do is drop down the Android folder and say export Android application. Then we can select the project to export. Obviously we've already selected our project, so it's got that straight away. Now we can use an existing key store which contains our license, or we can create a new key store. So obviously as we're starting from scratch we need to create a new key store. So I'm just going to click on browse, and this is where the key store or the license will be saved. So what you need to do is go to the location in which you want to save your license, and then we just need to put in the file name, so I'll just say license so I know what it is, and then I'm going to click on save. Then you need to put a password on there because you don't want everybody using your license. So I'm just going to put it in as test123, but obviously you would never share that information with anybody. It would not be a good idea. So then what we're going to do is click on next. Now we need to create an alias. So I'm just going to say something like Loz. Very slang. And again I'm going to put on the password test123. Confirm the password. And then we have the validity of the license. Just about said it. But essentially you would normally set this to 25 years, and that's when the license will expire and you just create a new one. Then we need to put a first and last name in, and you can fill out all these details if you wish, but I'm just going to click on next. Then we can choose the destination of the APK file. I'm going to set this to the desktop again, so click on Browse, and I'm just going to save this on the desktop as mycartoons.apk. So I'm going to click Save. That's fine, and the certificate expires in 25 years, which is what I set it to. And then click Finish, and it will export the Android application to an APK file, which is then installable on our device. So that's finished, and I can just quickly minimize this. Now, as you can see, I have these two files. I have the license file and I have the mycartoons.apk file. Now, the license file is only important for when you are exporting your application. However, the APK file is the file we need to install on our device. So I'm going to open up my HTC software, and I'm just going to click on Application Installer. And I'm on the desktop, and as you can see, I have this mycartoons.apk file. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to click on Install. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly pull up the application that we've installed and show it to you on my webcam, like so. Now you can see I have my original my cartoonsmart application, and here we have the application that I've just exported from the Eclipse IDE, saying My Cartoons. And as you can see, the logo isn't styled. We also don't have a startup screen image, so we need to add one of those in as well. But as you can see, the application is working. So it's important to note that with Dreamweaver, you don't get to see all of these files, okay? You just get to see the www folder. So all of your HTML, CSS and JavaScript files need to be inside of this www folder. That's very, very important. And as you can see, we have this index.html file, which is loaded up by default, and essentially it's displaying that information right there on my device, like so. So now what we need to do is style up our icon that's on the home screen so that we have this nice cartoonsmart logo for our application My Cartoons. So how are we going to do that? Well, it's actually very, very easy to do. We need to first of all go to the location of where our project was saved, which mine is in the default location, which is inside this workspace folder. And there's my project, My Cartoons. And inside of there, we want to go into Res, and we have these three files. Now, these three files that we have right here are very, very important files because they contain all of our different icons. You're probably going, well, different icons, why is that? Well, some devices have more real estate space, such as a tablet compared to a smartphone screen, and so some devices need bigger icons and other devices with smaller real estate space, such as smartphones, they need smaller icons. So we have these three folders right now. And what we can do is we can take a look at the PhoneGap website, again the wiki, and it tells us that the HDPI folder has an icon of 72 pixels by 72 pixels. The MDPI is 48 pixels by 48 pixels, and the LDPI is 36 pixels by 36 pixels. So obviously this is for the Android platform. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up all of these images. So that one, and that one, all inside of Fireworks, so we can edit that straight away. So I'm just going to copy that, and as you can see, you can have alpha transparency on it and stuff like that, and I'm just going to design this all up real quick. Okay, so obviously this is the lower resolution, which is 36 pixels by 36 pixels. This is the next one up, so we want to just create a quick icon for that, like so. Looking pretty good. And just saving that real quick, deleting that out, pasting it in. Like so. Okay, so that is looking pretty cool. Now you'll notice that I haven't changed the name. Okay, it's not like Dreamweaver where you can just select an image and so forth, and it will basically rename the image to IC_launcher and then put it in the correct folder, but you don't get to see it doing that. So it's very important that you remember not to change the names. Just change the file, but don't change the names. Okay, so now that we have changed all of our icons, what we now need to do is add in a splash screen image. So what I'm going to do is go to my old project and copy out the splash screen image and paste it in. This is again a PNG image, and I'm going to rename it to Splash, like so. Very, very important. So I'm going to copy this and paste it in the other 3 folders, like so. And then what I'm going to do is add in a bit of Java code. So what I'm going to do is inside of my project, I'm going to go into the source folder, and then I'm going to click on com.cartoonsmart.mycartoons. Now that'll appear with whatever package name you put in. I'm just going to open that up, and we have this mycartoons activity.java file, and I'm going to double click that so it opens up, and inside of this onCreate method we are going to put in a little bit of Java code. Okay, so just above this super.load URL, okay, and that's telling it to load that index.html file as soon as the application boots. Just above that, I want to put in a new line and say super dot set, all lowercase. Now remember that this is case sensitive, so it's very, very important that you do it exactly as I'm doing it here. Super, all lowercase, period, set, all lowercase, integer with a capital I, no space, set integer property. And as you can see, the Eclipse IDE has pretty much done all of that for us. So I can click on that. Then we need to put in the name. So the name of this is going to be Splash Screen, like so. And the value, again, separated by a comma. The value is going to be capital R dot drawable. As you can see, Eclipse has got that for us again. Very, very handy. All lowercase, dot, splash. Like so. And don't forget that right on the end we need to add a semicolon so that it gets rid of that error. Okay, so now that we've added a little bit of Java code, which shouldn't be too frightening, okay, and remember the exact position of that, it's just above the super.load URL. So I'm going to save that, very, very important. And then what we're going to do is right click on our main project folder, click on export, export for Android. I've already got that project selected, that's fine. Put in the password, and obviously we are using an existing key store, which is located on our desktop, and I put the password in, test123. Alias, I'm just going to choose Loz, and the password for that alias was test123. The destination I've chosen again on the desktop, and it's just warning me that the destination file already exists, so I'm about to override a file, which is fine. So I'm going to click on finish, and there we go, it's finished. Open up my HTC software, click on application installer, go to the desktop, click the Apk file, click open, click install. And now you will instantly be able to see that it is changed to our cartoonsmart icon right here that I've redesigned. So the logo is actually very, very easy to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is tap on it, and you want to be watching on this screen right here for the splash screen. There we go, there was the splash screen, and there we have the application. So that is it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we'll be talking about the core concepts of PhoneGap and delving in to that wonderful PhoneGap API. Thanks for watching.